Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at the Amazing Jungle Run. The Amazing Jungle Run is brought to you by Buddy Pal Games. It's for 1 to 4 players ages 12 and up, and games range anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. In the Amazing Jungle Run, you happen to be dropped off in the middle of the jungle. However, your travel agent and the brochure led you to believe that this would be a luxurious vacation spot with a quaint, well-stocked bungalows, as well as relaxing waterfalls. However, you're finding that not to be the case. You're now having to scour the jungle for your own food while avoiding all the wild animals. And along the way, you found a cave. And there's some interesting cave paintings. One of a man-eating plant? I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. So the goal here in Jungle Run is to be the first player to acquire 9 points. And there's various cards and animals you're gonna have to deal with and use along the way. All right, let's take a look at setup. So in the Amazing Jungle Run, there are 3 types of decks. You have the resource deck, you have the peril deck, and you have your main deck, which are larger cards. And you have dice, which you'll be rolling in order to acquire cards throughout the game. Now, at the bottom here, in this handy little playmat, you will set up the 4 main decks. And there are some cards that are worth more points. The 2-point cards and the Shaman card, which is worth 3, are going to be shuffled into those first 16 cards that are going to get laid out into this 4 stacks. And then you'll lay out the rest of the cards on top of those. You want those cards to come up later in the game. You're going to seed the deck, so to say. Before we jump into gameplay, let's take a closer look at some of these decks of cards. So these main cards that you're going to be trying to acquire through the game, there's some different types. You have power cards, you have common cards, and you have the point value cards. Now, the common cards are pretty critical throughout the game. They're going to do some special things for you. Acquiring 3 of them will give you the ability to get another peril card. 3 cards will also allow you to eliminate a man-eating plant card if it's been played on you. And there is an explorer card that allows you to move cards around. But if you have 3 common cards, you can eliminate that threat as well. Now, the commons are tigers, you have hippos, and you have toucans. And as you acquire these cards throughout the game, some of them give you bonuses in the top right of the card, which will be giving you an extra peril card, maybe you're going to get resources, or you might see an arrow, which will allow you to grab the card below it as well. And you have the power cards. You have the king, which is the lion, you have the gorilla, and you have the hyena. All these cards are what you want to acquire and put in your tableau in front of you, use for later in the game, probably mid or late game, because they're going to allow you to pull cards without having to roll dice. They do various different things, and like the hyena allows you to pull a card from the bottom of the deck, and if you'd use your actions to peek at that bottom, well, then you know what's there. So there's reasons to hold on to these cards till later in the game for sure. So let's take a closer look at these peril cards. And the nice thing about peril and the resource cards is that it's very straightforward, very explicit at the bottom of the card what these cards will do for you. So if we take a look at just a couple of them, off limits this turn means you can shut down one of the main decks. And that's what really a lot of these peril cards are for. They're going to be manipulating this main deck, or maybe directly attacking your opponent by playing a man-eating plant on them, which will take away their actions. And we'll take a look at actions and how the game progresses in a minute. But there's things like manipulating the decks, moving cards around with transport. You've got scavenger, which allows you to take 1 common card from an opponent, so you're stealing from them as well. And the broken binoculars. So there's an explorer card that can be played from the resource deck, and this will shut down the explorer card. And the explorer card is all about manipulating these main deck of cards as well. And then you have quicksand, and quicksand is really valuable because when you play it in defense on one of the main decks of cards, then the next player has to deal with that card. They can't choose a different card to attack or go after on their turn. And now these resource cards, oh man, they do so many things, which can lead to a ton of different strategies in this game. You're going to be able to manipulate dice with these cards. You're going to be able to not only go after a common card, but then also on the same turn go after a point value or a dice rolling card or one of the power cards. And there's cards in here that will allow you to look at the bottom of the deck or shuffle cards or displace cards from the top of the deck to the bottom of the deck. All kinds of actions and things that you can perform with these cards, as well as getting rid of the dreaded plant, the man-eating plant, by using ants to ward it off. So it is very valuable to have a nice stack of these as you're moving through the game. Now, there are 3 phases to every player's turn. The first one being the action phase. And you have some options here. You have 2 actions you can perform. And if a man-eating plant has been played on you, it will limit your actions. But in general, you always have 2 actions to perform. So you can either draw for 1 action, draw one of the resource cards, or spend 2 actions to grab a peril card. Or you could spend 1 action to look at the bottom of one of the decks, of the main decks in the 4 stacks. Now, why would you do one over the other? Well, it depends on where you are in the game. I find that going after resource cards early really helps. Peril cards are great for mid and late game, but it's all going to depend on your strategy. Gathering resources, though, really does help you manipulate things throughout the game. So spend those action points wisely. Now, phase 2 of a player's turn is all about manipulation and collecting. And that's where you'll be going after these main deck of cards, the ones that are located at the bottom, the larger cards. And this is where the point values are going to be. If you find a point value card and you choose to go for it, then you have to roll dice. And you're going to be rolling dice twice in order to try to acquire the right colors of dice in order to pull that numbered card. Now, if you have good resource cards, you have the ability to manipulate the dice, which is super handy, right? And as you go through these decks, the 2-point and the shaman cards are going to come up, and you're going to have to be rolling more dice, getting 3 of a kind for the 2-pointers. And that's where you might save those resource cards where you can really manipulate the dice. And then there's the power cards. You've got the hyena, you've got the gorilla, and you have the Lion King or the King, right? And he is going to give you the ability to grab cards. And so when you acquire those power cards, you're going to be holding on to them because really you want to use them mid or late game to dive into these decks a little bit more, because a lot of times they allow you to grab cards from the top without having to roll for them. They are going to give you a lot of different abilities. But once you use them, they're done and out. So you have to use them wisely for sure. And then you have the commons. Commons, again, super powerful because you're trying to get groups of 3 of them in order to help you throughout the game. But they also give you bonuses. So a lot of times they're going to give you a free resource card, or they're going to give you a peril card. Now, if you see multiples of the same common, like let's say there's 2 tigers or 2 toucans or 2 hippos in play, then you can acquire both of those cards. And if there's bonuses on both, you get both of the bonuses. But again, you're trying to collect sets of those so you can use them throughout the game. And turning 3 in is going to give you a peril card, or perhaps it's going to shut down the man-eating plant that's on you. So there's all kinds of things that you're going to use those common cards, so they are very important. But you can't neglect getting points because you can fall behind. So it's a balancing act for sure. The last phase of your turn is the defense phase. And this is where you might play cards like quicksand or off limits, where you're going to shut down a deck of cards or force a player to play on a deck of cards that you're trying to prevent them from getting a 2-pointer by forcing them to go after a common or something like that. But again, there's ways to augment and manipulate the decks. If you have a rhino card and you had to go for a common, then you can still go for a point value card. So there's all kinds of reasons to go after those resource cards and peril. Again, everything is a balancing act in this game, trying to hit at least most of the bases and watching what your opponent's doing. And it gets really hectic in like those 3- and 4-player games. You have to really keep an eye on things. But in that 2-player game, it's really a decent head-to-head back and forth. And there's a lot of like tug and war, and the points are fluctuating up and down, and people can pull it out at the end, especially if that shaman card shows up and they're able to grab it. And so then the player with 9 points is going to be the ultimate survival of the amazing jungle. Alright folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview. Everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, this game is definitely fast-paced, and based on the cards that come up and how you can manipulate them, can really change and ebb and flow the game. It's pretty interesting. I think the thing I like the most is this feeling of tug of war back and forth as the point values shift and move up and down. And as you throw those man-eating plant cards on somebody, if you throw multiple of those on your opponent, you can actually eliminate all of their actions. However, one thing to note is that not only can you use cards to get rid of those, but you can also just skip your turn, will eliminate a man-eating plant. So again, everything in this game is all about a balancing act. But ultimately, folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando, in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching the Dice Tower.